Hello, welcome to the Live Rally Games podcast. My name is Steven, and today we're here to talk about the Root of All Evil and do a deep dive with the winner. And to begin, joining us is the creator and showrunner of Root of All Evil, Clark. Clark, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Doing well. I'm super excited to dig into the game and talk to your first. This is not the first time you've hosted this game, but the first live game you've hosted of Root of All Evil, and talk to its winner.
Yep. And I mean, it's been quite a long time since I actually ran the game. So it's a good thing it's still very fresh in my memory. So I'm very glad to have it all be out and finally get to celebrate Jamie's win and just get to discuss the game because it was a really fun season.
Yeah. And we have with us the winner, the star of the show, Jamie. Jamie, how are you doing?
I am feeling really great. I mean, I am happy to be here with literally two of my favorite people on the planet. So, this is like, a dream unto itself to just interact with the two of you together. So, but I'm very excited to chat about everything. It feels like it was definitely a while ago, but also feels like yesterday at the same time. And it's just nice that that's just all out there in the world now. So, feeling good.
How does it feel with the secret being out in the open now?
It kind of reminds me of like coming out again, in a weird way. It feels really good. It feels really good. I certainly tried my best to hold this in for a very long time, but Clark knows how excited I am and how excited I have been about stuff. So it's nice that it's out there more than anything.
So, Clark, can you start by giving us like an overview of what is Root of All Evil and how does it play?
Of course. So Root of All Evil, it sort of was born out of, I love the mole. I know Jamie loves the mole. But I've always wanted to host a mole online game. And the first one that I had hosted was back in like 2013, 2014. And just the format of it was very complicated to try and run online. So that's actually one of the only Facebook online games that I had to withdraw halfway through. But the idea of a mole-esque format sort of merged with my love of the Roaring Twenties. And so the Root of All Evil is formed. So how the game works is there's a group of socialites, and in that group, one of them is the killer. And very Roaring Twenties, murder mystery-esque. Each round, there's a challenge. And in the beginning, it's always going to be divided up into like pairs and teams. Most of the individual challenges are towards the end of the game. And there are going to be multiple challenge winners. So you don't have to finish in first place to be safe. You can finish in like the top half or so. So if you finish in the top half, you win the challenge and you are safe for the round. And you don't have to take the exam that round. Also, your placement determines how much money you get added into your bank account, because everybody starts out the game with a bank of $10 million. And you can spend it on advantages and safety and 1-point bonuses. And you have the opportunity to spend, steal. So I like having a bank account element to the game. The people that lose the challenge, they go into an auction where they have the money in their bank account. They can bid on safety, or if they don't think they're going to have enough for it, they can bid on a 1-point bonus and add a point to their exam. Highest bidder for each gets, highest bidder for safety gets safety. Highest bidder for the 1-point bonus gets a 1-point bonus. Then we go into the exam, and for the live version, it was either single or double eliminations for my online games. For those of you that know my online games, I tend to have a very, very large cast, usually around like the 30s or 40s. So I'll usually have double or triple eliminations for those. But yeah, that's the rough gist of it. It's a combination of balancing challenge strength while also being a mole game.
And Jamie, you are not unfamiliar with Root of All Evil because you've actually participated in 2 seasons of the online version.
Yeah. So I had so Clark has hosted 3 seasons of Root of All Evil online, and I played in both season 2 and season 3. I actually think I'm the only person in the cast who is in both seasons, or in 2 seasons, correct?
Correct. Yep.
I will say I did not have the best track record in Root of All Evil Online. There was room for growth, is how I would say it. But and it's weird because you've said this already a little bit, Stephen. But I love the mole. Like the mole is really my jam, and I love any sort of social deduction, hidden saboteur type of game. That's literally my favorite thing on the planet. That's why I host my own mole game online and in person now. So I definitely had a little bit of a chip on my shoulder, the fact that I had done so badly in the online versions, but I was definitely motivated to at least give it another go, especially when, I just knew that this would be, a big production from Clark, and just I adore him as well. So something I definitely really wanted to do.
Clark, when you were casting this game, what were you looking for in the players?
I'd say when I was casting, because it was a difficult casting process. I think we got around 60 or so applications. But one of the most important things is diversity was a very important thing for me. And diversity in more ways than one. I wanted diversity in terms of age, game knowledge. So Rex and I actually recruited two of our close friends, Andy and Amanda. They'd never played a live game, never played an online game, and they played in the Root of All Evil. So I just wanted to have a diverse cast in multiple ways.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I was looking for when casting. But I was also looking for diversity in who has played Root of All Evil and who has no idea what it is.
And so, Jamie, when you found out you were on the cast of Root of All Evil, did you do anything to prepare ahead of time, or you're just like, all right, we'll figure out when we get there?
Well, I'm actually trying to put myself back into the timeline of things. So I started to jump into live games in, let's say, approaching and during the pandemic, which that definitely was a wild time to be doing that. But it ended up pushing timelines with things for sure. But I applied to a few different things, all my first games, right around the same time. And then the pandemic happened, and that messed with some timelines. But my very first live games, the first two that I did were both mole games, just traditional mole games. And I feel like I kind of used that as a good template to at least get myself used to playing games and interacting with people. I knew going into this that one of my biggest factors was going to be I get really anxious just meeting people for the first time. I've had social anxiety since birth. So, just working through that, I think has been helpful. And honestly, playing games is just helpful with that in general because it helps bring me out of my shell a little bit. But just having some experiences in a couple other similar games that maybe didn't go quite the way that I wanted, I think was a good preparation in a way.
So having played the online game, now coming into the live game, were there things you wanted to do similar? Or are there things you're looking to do differently coming into it?
I'd say regardless of my success rate in terms of placement, one thing that I do pride myself on is I am a very observant person, and I'm very detail oriented, and I take a lot of notes. So I can guarantee I took a lot of notes during this game. And that's something I did for the online version as well. I don't always make the correct conclusions, but I always have the information that I need to make deductions. So I knew that was going to be something for me. And also, working to build some relationships. But say probably those.
Clark, one of the biggest decisions when casting a game like Root of All Evil is who is going to be the killer, right? What went into the decision process for that?
I would say the decision process, we usually, as a production team, try to narrow it down to a select few that we think would be good picks to be the killer. Because even though the killer doesn't have a whole lot of influence in the game, there's still an important role. They need to be able to have a good poker face when talking to people. They need to try and find a good balance in terms of navigating the quizzes, navigating the examinations, while also navigating the challenges. because you don't want them to be terrible in challenges where they're going to be in the exam every single week, and then people start to pick up on the fact that, oh, they're surviving the exam every single week, they're probably the killer. So you need somebody that has a good balance. So Michael was definitely somebody that was on our minds as a killer option very early on. We also wanted somebody, because we were planning on doing episodes, we also wanted somebody that is naturally a good speaker and is charismatic, and somebody that's able to explain their game well. So Michael was somebody that was a great pick for all of the options. And honestly, our next option for who the killer was going to be was, we were thinking Nicole Spears. So that it was pretty close between the two of them. But in the end, we went with Michael, because we thought that he'd be able to explain his game well. He seemed like he wasn't going to be a beast at challenges and like win every single one, but he'd be able to navigate winning challenges when he needed to, navigating the exams when he needed to. I was very proud of how Michael did this season. I think he was a great killer, did the best that he could, navigating the tour de force of Kiz and Jamie. But I was very happy with Michael's performance this season, and I think he was a great killer.
So Jamie, unlike the mole, where you have a player who is sabotaging and taking certain actions that can be picked up by other players, in the Root of Evil, you don't quite have that available to you. So what were you looking to do going into the game to help try to suss out who the killer was?
I feel I had a pretty deliberate strategy coming into this, I will say. So I know that I'm a very detail-oriented person. So I knew that I'd be able to like take notes, and I knew that I'd have all the information that I needed kind of from that lens of things. I will say my confidence was a little shaken coming into this because, like, again, the way that my other couple games that I had done at that point didn't necessarily end the way I would have wanted them to, in two different extremes. But so going into this, I was really like taking it very seriously, and I wanted to really balance genuineness, like leverage that in a way to get information with people, but also some shrewdness. So what I mean by that is one of the things that was really important for me was to like build connections with people. And Clark did an amazing job with casting, because I know a lot of people just in online org circle, and I figured I would know people in this game just based on like playing several of Clark's games. And there were people who I knew, but like I don't think that I knew one person in the cast well, is what I would say going into this. Like there are others that I knew but did not really interact with in an intentional way much or ever. So the only person who actually knew going into the cast decently was Nick Fishman. Apart from that, not really. So my goal was to like create really strong, genuine relationships with people, because this is a game where knowledge is power. So if I can create like really genuine bonds with people, and they can like really understand just me as a person and understand like how much a game like this means to me, which I will be transparent, it did mean a lot to me doing well. I knew that that would be like a good inroad for people. And it gets people to like give me information, and I wanted to approach this where I am taking in more from people than I'm going to be willing to give out to people. So, and that actually played out very well pretty quickly, honestly, because, I know this is jumping forward a bunch, but I feel like me and the person who I aligned with very closely, like were able to really make a lot of like deductions pretty early on in the game that were very beneficial. But I am historically a pretty loyal person in games. I'm often loyal to a fault to people. Stephen, you can think what you want to that. So I think that I have shown that. So I knew that going into this, I wanted to have one person who I could be loyal to and just absolutely loyal to. And then anyone else, I decided that this time that I was going to be a little bit more shrewd and a little bit more cutthroat to try to be successful for me. So it ended up being Kiz. who I just bonded with pretty quickly, and we were like a good, really strong working duo. I also had really good working relationships with Nick. I had working relationships with Destiny. I had a good relationship with Jake. I had a good relationship with several people in the game who were just willing to like tell me things. Monica is another good one. So I don't know if that answered your question. I feel like I rambled a little bit, but that's a lot of what it was.
So getting to the start of the game, that first night, Clark, correct me if I'm wrong, that's mostly kind of orientation game rules, like the game that hasn't formally started yet, correct?
Correct. So the first night it was everybody gathered together in their Roaring Twenties attire, which A+ from the entire cast. Like I told the entire cast, like, come in your best Roaring Twenties attire, and they delivered. And those cast photos show, because I was so happy editing those. So everybody came out decked to the nines, like they looked outstanding. And it was just going over the format, how it differed a bit from Root of All Evil Online, because there were a few online competitors there. So how it's going to differ, introducing the wine cellar twist, because that was new. Unfortunately, we were supposed to have the opening auction that first night, but somebody's flight was delayed, so we needed to sort of push it back to the following morning so that we could give everybody a fair chance.
Jamie, what was your reaction to just seeing the cast and meeting everyone that night?
Overwhelming, but good. Everyone was very friendly. It was a very good, very likable cast. But like, I do get pretty overwhelmed pretty easily meeting people for the first time. So I think just taking a step back was very helpful for me, and also like making a couple of like quick connections was good, because I can kind of use that as a safe base to then talk more to people. But I do feel like I really try to chat with every individual person, at least to a small degree that first night.
Did anyone stand out to
you? Definitely, like I knew Nick going into this, so he was just like a good, safe person to talk with. He ended up being my roommate for it. Kiz as well, just because I can't describe just how much I love that woman and her personality. She is just one of the coolest, most it's weird, like both insane and down to earth at the same time. Like that's how I describe her, insane and down to earth people. And I could just like vibe very well with her energy. So the two of them, I think were big standouts to me. I also really, I enjoyed everyone. I never in my life thought I would meet Jared Spieler, because I had not seen him in years in that point. So like meeting him was like really interesting and cool. But everyone, there's some big personalities in the group. I'll say that.
Out of curiosity, Clark, where was this game hosted?
It was in North Carolina. I think it was Wilmington, North Carolina, to be exact. Jamie, you might remember.
It was hosted literally, and I mean literally, down the road from where Victory House Season 3 was hosted. It's the same body of water. It's another house on that same body of water.
Okay, I know where that is.
They were actually supposed to use that same house. So Carlo, I think for one of the seasons, he had shown a picture of the house, and at that point, we had already booked it for Root of All Evil. So I messaged Carlo. I was like, "Hey, just letting you know that the picture that you posted, we're going to be at the exact same house for Root."
Yeah.
So would it have been a good location for a mole game too, Jamie?
Honestly, yeah. It was a really good space. So it was a very, very nice space, lots of room and everything. And it was there were like separate connected buildings even there.
So. Yeah. So the way it was structured, it was like one main house, and then the gazebo, like kind of a gazebo. It was like a middle area that they sort of used for like weddings, because all the pictures that we were shown, it was like wedding tables. And they had like a middle section where most of the game was held. That's where all the eliminations were held, most of the challenge results, a lot of the evening challenges were held there. And then there was a guest house connected to it. And then there was the backyard, and then we didn't get to use the front yard very much. But now they have a pool and a hot tub in the backyard, so that would have been great. Because I would have loved like at least one swimming cup.
Oh, that'd been good. I
For the
would
future.
have liked that.
hmm
So at the start of the first full day, you have this large advantage at auction. Every player starts with, to my understanding, $10 million. And Clark, do you want to explain this opening auction?
Yeah, of course. So how the opening auction works is everybody gets a bank account with $10 million. And the first opportunity that they have to spend money is at the opening auction. So there are 9 different auction passes that are available. And these passes range from getting to pick the teams for one challenge, to adding a 1-point bonus to your exam, to adding or subtracting 60 seconds from a player's exam time, stealing money. The pass that Jamie got was actually one of the new. We had 2 new auction passes for this season. So the one that Jamie had purchased was the Mulligan pass. And Jamie, if you want to explain that a little bit better.
Yeah. So I got the pass that I most wanted, honestly. But just even taking a step back, like I can't explain enough, and this will come up later, I'm sure, just how important money management in this game. Like I would say knowledge is power, but money is power, probably more than anyone. If you are just viewing the game, you might not realize just how like powerful that can be, especially as you get toward the end game. But the power that I got is the Mulligan pass, which allowed me to any one quiz that I wanted, I could take twice, which that was an extreme advantage for me, I felt, because it's essentially like a get out of jail free card because I knew the information so well, because I had such detailed notes, I could take my quizzes in a way that almost guaranteed that I would make it through regardless of who the killer is, based on how I spread my answers between the 2 quizzes. So it's I think it's the best one, I think.
It definitely was, and it was the last one, so I knew it was going to be like the most overpowered of the bunch, or like it was the biggest auction pass available, because in the online version there was a pass where you could guarantee your safety if you lost a challenge, and I was like, that might be a bit too much, especially for a cast that is not the size of 36 to 42. So I thought that the Mulligan pass was like a fair trade.
These bids were secret bids?
They were, yes. So how it worked was each socialite got a sheet, and they got to write down how much they wanted for each pass. And then the socialite that bid the highest on each pass got that pass, and their money was deducted. So for the Mulligan pass, that was the very last one. People may have had money deducted from their bank already. So if they had, it went in order based on how big the pass was. So the first one in line was like steal 25% of somebody's account publicly. So if somebody spent money on that and they didn't have enough money for the last pass, they couldn't get the last pass. So the Mulligan was the last one in order.
Were there any other advantages you wanted to get as well, Jamie?
There were I put some level of money on everything, but like by far the Mulligan was the one that I most wanted. I wanted things that were most directly going to impact my ability to stay in the game. So things like, a teammate pass didn't really matter as much to me as like, a point advantage or like a point disadvantage, or getting to take the quiz multiple times, things that directly impacted, in the most clear way, people's ability to stay in the game is what mattered the most to me.
So Jamie, you ended up spending $5 million to acquire the Mulligan advantage.
I'm still shocked I got it for that now. Like, that was a steal. And I believe I tied with someone.
Nicholas. And he went out round 1.
R.I.P.
So in the case of the tie, how did you decide that Jamie got it?
There was a tiebreaker at the bottom of the sheet. It was how much money was spent on all 9 passes. So I can like pull up the sheet right now. It might take me a couple minutes.
Good.
But I will say, after that experience, when I found out that I tied with a $5 million bid, it did start to get me thinking. So some other auctions that we did for advantages, I would start doing like $1,001,001 or something like that. so I wouldn't have to risk a tie as much.
So with the Mulligan Pass in hand, you go to the start of the first round essentially, where you're broken up into teams and you have to compete through 3 different challenges. How did this go for you?
Oh, it went really great. I had so I will say a common theme for me through all of day one is Jake Sparts. So I was on Jake's team for the first challenge and the second and the third and the fourth. But the first one was myself, Jake, and Destiny on a team, and that was like a really fun team, I would say, because like they're different people, but they're both really good personalities to interact with, and they were quite helpful there.
Were the teams mostly picking at random, or players selected teams?
So all of the challenges, the teams are determined by random,
Gotcha.
unless if somebody played an auction pass where they got to pick the teams.
So Random
and there's
Chance
only one
really
round.
likes Jake and Jamie together on a team.
Absolutely. And Nick and Jared as well.
Yeah.
So
my fun fact actually that I'll say is I don't think Michael and I were ever on a team in the entire game.
Really?
Yeah, we were never on a team together.
Because it was only the first 6 challenges, and if you were on a team with Jake, it was just the way the chips were in there. So
yeah, we were never on a team. I think that's really funny.
Huh.
So you win your first challenge. So you're not going to be taking the first quiz. What do you do in this down period?
I'm trying to put myself back as if I was there. I will say that much, but it was definitely a lot of like chatting with people. So like one thing that's so Clark briefly mentioned this, but one player didn't get there until that morning, and that was Nicole. So like I definitely had like a chat with her at some point. I was trying to have chats with more people who hadn't talked as much, and at that point I was definitely working the closest with Kiz and Nick. So you know, trying just to like see, you know, people's reads on things. So just generally speaking, like I would describe this game, Clark has always talked about it as being, you know, the mole meets Clue, because there's clues to use to determine who the killer is. So that's a piece of it. I also add a layer of my own that I feel like there's like a Big Brother element to it, not in terms of like nominations or voting or anything, but relationships matter a lot. So part of why I did so well, I think, was because like I had relationships with people who were willing to tell me what it was that they were doing at opportune times. So it was definitely a relationship building. And also at that point, people were finding clues left and right about who the killer was. You know, like
do you want to talk about these clues that you and other people found?
So we found clues all around the house and even outside. That shows up in some of the live videos that are now posted, but it would basically be a clue with the logo of the season on it, and it would just say like a random thing on them, so to speak. So like this one that I have with me, it just says, "On Wednesday we wear pink."
Well, one thing I love about this is like, is that laminated, or like is it just like
it is laminated?
Yeah, so it has this what you're holding has this very official look to it.
Yes, they are all fake, and they are all the work of one Miss Destiny Doppler.
So I'll sort of like second this. Destiny had asked pre-season if she could like print out fake clues, and back when I did Root of All Evil Online season 1. The contestant by the name of Bryce Lancaster created a fake Facebook profile called Killer and was posting clues under that account. So I was like, I feel like it's only fair to allow fake clues to be in the game. So I was like, Destiny, go right ahead. But if somebody comes to ask me if these clues are legit, I'm just going to zip my lip. I'm not saying a thing. So yeah, that's how the fake clues were brought in.
I don't think people as a whole, I don't think the cast as a whole deduced that they were fake until like quite late, if ever. But I do know that me and at least a couple other people had a strong suspicion that they were probably fake I thought they were real at first. I was definitely duped with that, but probably by the end of round 2 sounds about right. And it was because I think that it was Nick who reminded me of this, but don't quote me there. It was someone who came to me and was like, you know, these could be real, but Clark is such a detail-oriented person. And while these are very professional, the logo is from the online game. The logo is not from the live game. So that difference was very telling. So when we put that through, like, okay, let's ignore these by and large.
Okay, that's a great detail to realize that like Clark would not have made a mistake like this.
Yeah.
It was like the one that Jamie showed. It was like the logo that we had made pre-casting, and then post-casting we made the one with the bloody handprint. And Destiny she literally just took the Facebook banner and printed that out.
Yeah. I mean, it was good. It was good.
Do you wish you had brought your own fake clues into the game, Jamie? Or is that just not too much going on?
I like the concept of it. I thought it was funny at the end of the day, but it's not something that I personally would do. You know, I'd rather focus on myself and what I'm doing than create that level of chaos. But to each their own.
So you mentioned that already, even at the start of round one, you, Nick, and Kiz, you're feeling close to both those players. Are you and are you also spending a lot of time, talking to players, taking the quiz, trying to get a sense of where they're leaning at this point?
Definitely, and I'd say it definitely increased over time for sure. And what I'll say is I was very close with Nick and I was very close with Kiz. I think that people kind of knew that I was close with Nick because we were roommates. To my knowledge, I'm far from perfect, but to my knowledge, I don't think people in the game ever really caught on to how close Kiz and I were. Because Nick, Kiz, and I weren't a thing. I was just close with Nick and I was close with Kiz. And Kiz was close with me and she was close with other people as well. But at the end of the day, we were each other's like ride or die. And I don't think people really knew that.
So round one, you have a little bit of an advantage again, and just a lot of people playing stuff everywhere, but doesn't affect you. You're not in threat of elimination.
Yeah, for once.
Round two, let's see. You do not win this challenge. The teammate pass happens. You're on another team with Jake Sparks. You lose your challenge. You're going to take the first quiz.
However, I will say we were damn close. We were the next closest team, and we were only not safe by a few seconds. So
yeah, it was like within 5 seconds.
Yeah, that's the story of Jake and I's lives. We're always very close.
So talk me through, you're going to take this first quiz. I know you love splitting answers among different people. What's your strategy going into this?
So I will admit, losing the second challenge was not a good feeling. I was quite hard on myself because I felt like I messed it up for Jake and I, even though that's not really that fair or true. It was a team effort, but I was quite down. And this was one of the instances where I definitely remember like sharing how I was feeling and how I was doing. Like I had a confessional right before it because in the last online version that I had taken, I was eliminated the very first quiz that I took. And I was just like so nervous that was just going to happen again. But I actually had a chat with Destiny right before the quiz. And she gave me a good like pep talk about it. Like, just talking about, how I can do it and how, even if it doesn't go my way, it's not like that big of a deal in the grand scheme of things. But you're right. My strategy is always going to be to split my answers, especially early on, because like we can't know who this is. Like there's no way to know that early, but I had a few different, like at least suspicions, I'll say, at least like early targets who I was considering it to be. So I wanted to make sure going into it that I split my answers, definitely hitting those few people, but hitting as many people as I can. So I would play a lot of majorities. I would just like make sure I wasn't leaving anyone out, that as far as I could tell anyway. So
at this point, there are 15 potential suspects out there. You end up choosing JT for the question of who do you believe the killer is. Well, how come?
So honestly, it comes down to a couple factors. One of them is knowing who other people are suspecting, because if I can like choose people who are largely suspected by multiple people, at least it makes my answer similar to them. So I thought that would be helpful. But also, like, I'll be honest, I tried to put myself in Clark's mind and like think who would Clark choose as a killer. So that's what led me to like a few suspicions. I thought JT, I thought Jared, I thought Michael, as just like initial possibilities. For the women, I think my top pick was Monica, just initially. So those were probably my original 4 people that I was suspecting. I'll say there's a clue that comes up that made me double down on all of that. And also, mind you, at this point, the very first quiz that I took, I was still buying into the fake clues to a degree. So like that was playing a role, but like I just felt like Clark would want to choose someone who is affable, likable, able to connect with people, build relationships, and blend in. And I feel like the people that I named are those things by and large.
And so you have the Mulligan Pass. What makes you decide not to play it this round?
I bought the +1, I believe, round 2.
Yes, and I was going to ask, like, why buy that already?
If you can, my philosophy was if you could get an advantage to move yourself forward, then do that. So if I did not get the +1, I would have used the Mulligan, but I thought it would be too much of overkill to play them both. I thought that I would be more likely to regret playing it than not, especially with a +1, because it is very powerful to have an extra point.
So, because then, like, you're always guaranteed at least 1 point on the quiz. You can't get a 0. And you're looking at the quiz scores.
But I can try to.
Even without the +1, you end up having the highest score on this quiz, which is interesting.
I mean, it helped that I was split. I didn't choose Michael as the killer, but even at that point, I was splitting with him as one of my top possibilities. So that's what I think was probably a significant part of it.
All right. So from here, Nicole and Stephanie are eliminated, and we go into round 3. And round 3 begins with the first wine cellar. And you are not one of the players who enters the wine cellar, but I think like...
Oh, that's a continued trend.
Yeah. There's like 5 different players who do visit the wine cellar. And Clark, was that first clue they received a picture of the periodic table of elements?
It was, yes. So how the wine cellar worked was if you had won the previous 2 challenges, so if you'd won both challenge 1 and challenge 2, you got to enter the wine cellar, and that was a clue to the killer's identity. Now, I knew, just based on the cast, that I had cast a ton of mole aficionados. So I was like, okay, I really have to think outside of the box with these clues. Like, I can't just do like a random anagram here or there. Like, it has to be something that is so insanely complicated that these mole superfans do not know what this is. And I think I accomplished that too well, because not a single person got any of the clues all season. So the first one was a picture of the periodic table of elements. The specific clue was, you couldn't really pick up on this watching the footage because it was spliced, but we held the periodic table up for a specific amount of time. Like, we had a timer. I think it was for like 36 or 37 seconds, something like that. And the players in the Root of All Evil, everybody was allowed to keep their phones because we weren't doing live feeds at that time. We weren't streaming. I felt like it was important. Hey, like, don't have your phone out when we're playing the game. But if you have an emergency, if you want to call a family member in downtime, go right ahead. I don't mind. Like, I'm flexible with that as a host. So I felt like if people have access to their phones, then these clues might be a little bit easier. So I held the periodic table up for 36 or 37 seconds, and that corresponded to an element on the periodic table that was listed as a poison. And that narrowed it down to people that listed a poison as their weapon of choice in the contestant dossier.
Which was the most common one.
It was the most common. I think like 5 people had poison.
Yeah.
But it was the first round. It narrowed it down to those 5.
What I will say to that, Clark, because I wasn't there, like, so my idea with like the wine cellars was always, win challenges and get there. That did not happen. So my secondary like strategy there was to always try to get the information verified from 2 different people on 2 different occasions. So if 2 people tell me the exact same thing or more, then it's probably what they're telling me that they saw is actually true. So I was able to do that. And so like, I didn't deduce like the amount of time or anything or how that was correlated or anything specific with the periodic table, but Kiz and I in our conversations, like, that did get us thinking that it is probably someone who said poison. Like that, we didn't decipher that was absolutely what that clue meant, but that did put us at least in that direction, because knowing the elements and that being a thing, like if it's going to be connected to something broadly, it's that. And like a lot of our suspects from that point were people who had said that.
And funny enough, like I know Michael was very worried when we showed the periodic table, because Michael was like, I'm a science teacher. Like I've been a science teacher. Like people could literally just see periodic table and think science.
Yeah.
And knowing Michael's a science teacher, they would go right to him. And I was like, wow, I really overthought this. And if people link it to Michael because of science, that would just be awful.
Yeah, that did not happen, at least. But I will say those people that, to say a little bit more, like the people that were in my suspect pool at that point, Michael, Jared, JT, Monica, every one of them said poison as their weapon of choice.
Well, do you remember who you were going to get the information about that? Like you said, was Destiny one of them, and Nick?
Destiny was definitely one of them. I think people were actually pretty forthright with sharing the things that they saw in the wine cellars, by and large anyway. So that wasn't really a huge concern, but I did want to make sure that I heard the same thing from people.
Definitely, I know when we played Victory House Mole, group thinking and like, kind of the cast kind of latching on to certain people being, the mole or the killer is a thing. Was that something you felt was happening in this game as well? Or are people much more closely holding their information?
I would say that by and large, groupthink was not as much of a thing in this season as it was in Victory House, because a number of factors. But day one, there were I'd say a handful of possibilities that I heard coming up a lot that people were thinking about. Day two, when we get there, a lot of day two, honestly, because I truly feel like by the end of day one, Kiz and I were pretty damn confident that we were right in who the killer was. Like we just really felt like that we knew, and we got the grand sense that no one else was really onto that person. So honestly, day two was she and I trying to convince people that we were A, more clueless than we were, and B, throwing people under the bus as being suspicious when they really weren't that suspicious to us. So effectively we were gaslighting people day two. That was the strategy and the goal.
So this third round, you have the challenge Blocked and Loaded. I appreciate the names of these challenges, Clark.
Thank you.
You do not win this challenge. You're going to take your second quiz. You've used, to my understanding, you used all your money in the previous round to buy the +1, correct?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Okay, and so likely that it's because you can't really bid for auction anything. Are you just like, well, I guess I'm going to use my mulligan pass then? It was pretty much a done deal.
Yeah. I wanted to use the mulligan, and on the mulligan, I put one of my I wanted to hit as many people as I could, but one of the quizzes I focused highly on JT, the other one I focused highly on Michael. And then Jared and Monica were my secondary picks for each of them. So that was really the goal there. You can correct me, Clark, but I've only seen, I think, the score for the higher quiz, but I don't know if I had used the other one, how that would have gone.
So you got an 8 out of 10 when you guessed Michael, and then you got a 4 out of 10 when you guessed JT. So regardless, even if you didn't use the mulligan pass, you still would have been safe, because Destiny and JT both got 3.
Okay. But it is definitely a confidence booster regardless. So, and I will just say, the boot order, especially day one, was insane. The people who got eliminated were not the people were expecting to get eliminated. Basically.
That's what I was most surprised at that. Seeing Nicholas and Destiny and JT and Darian, these big, Catherine too, big org names, and they're going out very, very early. Nicole, now I know she had totem pole experience, so unfortunately, she's been an early boot before, but Nicole's a great game player, and I'm really glad that playing Synergy, Nicole had a great experience playing that. So I was just really surprised at the boot order and how early a lot of these big name vets went.
Well, I feel like mole slash root of evil. I feel like there's a big chance there's a big aspect of randomness early on when people just don't know, and it's a lot of like how are you putting your answers and like. So I always feel like that sometimes early eliminations you're just like, well, it could just happen.
It's literally a crapshoot. Like Catherine and Nicholas, I think they both got 1 out of 10 on their first exam. And Amanda did also, because Amanda got Stephanie's demerit. But Amanda took it in a quicker time than Catherine and Nicholas.
Yeah,
so
she blew through that.
It was like a minute that Amanda did it in. So, yeah.
So, because we're talking about round 3, can I say something here that I just feel is like extremely important to how the game ended up playing out afterward?
This is your time. Go for it.
So certainly, JT gets eliminated. That's always going to be helpful for me, just because he was one of my main suspects. But like I said, I built I was working on building like very genuine connections with broadly folks across the board. Like I think I had like good relationships, and like that actually was kind of cool because by the end I was not necessarily the closest with every person in the game, but I think when I won the game, people by and large were happy with that outcome. And I think that, just how I treated them and how I interacted with them is a piece of that. So, but right before the 3rd quiz, there was definitely like some larger group conversations happening about how people were thinking of voting and for that quiz. But Destiny leaving round 3 was a very big game changer for a lot of folks because, again, she's a big personality. She had lots of connections in the game, and she was one of the vocal people to say that Michael was one of her suspects. She said Michael was one of her suspects. She said a couple other people were one of her suspects. And she said that to the group of people who were going to be taking the quiz. Right before taking that quiz, literally right before, I have a very quick, like 30-second conversation with her where she says that what she said there was not true. And so she told me who she was actually planning to vote for on the quiz. And that was like, I think, game changing because people assumed that she got eliminated with voting for Michael and a couple of other people, which was just not true. So, that I think is just a very big factor.
So after this round, how confident are you that Michael is the right track? I mean, you don't get to see your scores, so like
I don't necessarily know that I'm right. I just know for
but
sure someone who is wrong who I can use, because I was pretty confident that she was more thinking Jared was the killer when she was eliminated. So I was, and that was great for me because, I at that point had thought Jared, Michael, Monica, one of the 3, So I could therefore push that, and kids could push that as like, hey, like this is a really good option still. Because I truly thought that there was no way. Again, this is all, you have to trust people because like Destiny could have been lying to me. Like she didn't have to be telling the truth to me, but I trusted that she didn't have an ulterior motive in that moment to not do that because we had a couple of like really good heart-to-hearts during this. And that ended up being the right read. So that is just like, I think a very big moment here because then I was able to push Jared until he got eliminated.
Well,
so effectively that took out 2 suspects in one, JT and Jared. So I had like a top 2 at that point.
So one thing I'm curious is like, who are you sharing that, you actually think Michael's a suspect with? Is it just Kiz or is there anyone else?
Only Kiz. And I will say like I said, I wanted to have one close connection with someone. And it only ended up being Kiz over Nick by happenstance. I will say I still end up feeling guilty. I have a lot of guilt with like the Nick of it all with this game because I was dishonest a large portion of the time. But like the reason why I made the choice was honestly out of happenstance in that Kiz and I were the ones taking the quizzes together day 1, whereas Nick got through with it. So I almost felt like, well, there's not a lot of mutuality to the same degree that we can give each other right now. Whereas like Kiz and I were like kind of in the trenches a lot of day one together.
Yeah,
And in the end, Nick ends up winning your series, so it all works out.
It does. It does. It's funny how that world keeps on turning, but yeah.
So your last round of day one, you're playing essentially telephone, shape it up, where someone studies kangaroo pieces and they relate it to the partner. This doesn't go well for you either.
We did it backwards. It's so frustrating. Like we would have done so well at this, but like we put the shapes in like backwards in the rows. Yeah.
So likely because you haven't been winning challenges, you still have no money at this point, right?
Yes, thank you for that.
Okay. and so you have no advantage, you have no money. How are you feeling going to quiz number 4 here?
I felt nervous but okay. Because at that point I felt like I had only really 2 viable suspects, and just like demeanor wise, I just did not think it was Monica as much anymore. So I felt pretty locked and loaded on Michael. And like the thing was, we could have been wrong. Like it was speculation, but Kiz and I's conversation going into the quiz that round was, this was a very big quiz in the game because it is the final double elimination. There are only 5 people taking the quiz and 2 of them are going to get eliminated. So our thought there was, if we go into this putting all of our chips on Michael and we survive, we are almost definitely right. And if we are right, then she and I could essentially run the rest of the game through together. So that was very much the plan and the goal, and that worked out. But I was nervous as heck, but like I had like this bit of confidence that we were going to do that. But what is really funny, I will point out, is the 3 people who survived that quiz ended up going on to be the final 3 players of the game. So myself, Kiz, and Jake.
I mean, so going this quiz, given 5 people taking it, 2 being eliminated, you know, did you get the sense other people were going all in too, or were the people still...
I wasn't sure. It is really interesting, the 2 who got eliminated, because on the one hand, you have Andy, who did not take a single quiz day one otherwise. And then poor Darian, who was in every single quiz of day one. Poor Darian went through it. So I wasn't sure exactly what they would do, but I just knew, like, at the end of the day, it was our best bet. So this game, it's like really interesting. There's like a paradox here where obviously you think that you want to be safe, and you do, but there is an advantage to taking quizzes, particularly early quizzes, because it does give you knowledge. Like, and that's something that really benefited the 2 of us, because there are a couple people who didn't take a single quiz, or maybe 1 quiz day one, and like that was not a lot to go off of moving forward.
So how are you feeling end of day one?
Honestly, like I was feeling very good. Like I was feeling very optimistic because I truly, and so did Kiz, like we truly thought that we were the 2 people who are best positioned. Like we had a nice conversation, a private conversation, where we said, if we can continue like holding, like not upsetting the apple cart, we could make it to the end. And that's not a feeling that I thought going into this. I'm not a confident person ever in anything that I do in life. But like we really did. So we were like, had it like this conversation about how to navigate day 2, obviously talk to each other, but like make sure that we're talking a lot to other people and pushing other names, and basically any name that is not Michael, but pushing hard for names like Jared. And then we knew people thought it was Monica. Well, at that point, and since, you know, we survived our quiz with not putting anything on Monica, we no longer thought it was her. So it's like using the information from our quizzes and also, you know, from our allies who were eliminated, being able to leverage that was really helpful. So I don't know, does that make sense?
Yeah. Clark, were there any surprises for you as you're hosting this, or like were most of the things you're realizing was like post game once you could actually see everything come together because you're so in the trenches hosting?
Yeah, no, like day 1, especially end of day 1, like my brain was completely fried. Like if you watch the footage back, I look like half a corpse trying to host in my Santa's favorite host shirt. But but no, it was like day one. The end of day one was just a lot on me. Like day two, that's when I was like refreshed, reinvigorated. Like I loved hosting day two. It was so great. But end of day one was a lot. The surprise was, as we're talking about Andy and Darian, watching Andy at the Shape It Up challenge. I knew he was tried. Like Andy's never played an online game. He's never played a live game. He's been killing the competitions, to my surprise. He's been killing the comps. But he does shape it up, and he just effectively stands there. And he maybe puts in like 2 pieces and then just stands there for like 30 seconds to a minute. And he's able, like, even if he doesn't know the pieces, put something in there. Like, put a 10-gram piece in each square so you can at least try and get a point. After the fact, because Rex and I are actually headed to Andy and Amanda's after this, Andy told me that he threw the challenge because after seeing Darian survive three exams, Andy was so set that it was Darian that he threw the challenge and went all in on Darian in the exam. And he is the only person the entire season to get a 0 in that exam. And I was like, great job, Andy. Well done.
Hey, these games are all about learning.
Yeah. And he did learn.
Jamie, like, this isn't Survivor. You can't vote people out. But are you identifying players? You're just like, they're going to be a problem to me as this game progresses?
I mean, I was certainly worried about Nick because I knew who Nick's suspects were, like, because he is very transparent with me, but he is a good gamer. So like he is someone who I was very worried about in the end game, and I will have more to say about that when we get there. Nick is someone who I just had a lot of faith in to figure things out, and also Jared. But that's a paradox again, because like Jared I expect to do well at these, but I also want Jared in for a while because I don't suspect Jared anymore, but I want other people to suspect him.
So the next day starts with another visit to the wine cellar. Jamie is not part of it. So Clark, tell me about this clue for at the second wine cellar.
So the second wine cellar, it's a tic-tac-toe board. And everybody that was in the wine cellar was like trying to look around it, see if there was any additional clues. Like they were asking, hey, can we lift any of these letters up? And they were like, no, you don't have to lift. There's nothing underneath. It's just a plain tic-tac-toe board. The clue was that Michael was born on the year of the ox. And you have O.
Okay,
and
yeah.
X.
Yeah, I can see it.
So this is how like my brain thought at that time. I was like, oh, hey, it's the letters O and X. And instantly it takes you to the Chinese year of the ox. And I think it was only
that
Michael.
One would have went way over my head.
Yeah, I think it only would have, like, if somebody by pure magic would have figured out that clue, I think it would have narrowed them down to Michael and I think Jared.
I will say, like, I obviously wasn't there for the third clue, but like, I think it was Monica and Sarah told me about it, but like, they just did not recognize the person. Had I seen that third clue, I would have at least known who that was because
really?
I'm such a big Titanic fanatics. Like I would have absolutely known who that was, but I would not have necessarily been able to connect it. But I would have at least known who the hell that photo was because I know that person.
Well, yeah, and I put another symbol at the bottom, and I'll explain it a little bit later. Okay. Actually, maybe, yeah.
So this round, you're partnered up with Monica for Stack Attack, stacking blocks with cup hands, I believe, and you do well.
So I love this challenge. We came in first place. It was pretty great, and it was like really funny because Monica and I think had the biggest height differential of all the teams, but we did very well. The stat got at one point above over her head, but like it was, yeah, you basically had a cup on your hands and had to stack blocks together. It went pretty seamless. And I will like take a second now just to say that Monica is the low-key challenge beast of the season. Like she like crushed pretty much everything. Like, and I don't think people were necessarily expecting that, but she was like amazing at pretty much every challenge.
Jared and Monica,
except for running while blindfolded.
Yeah, but Jared and Monica were literally the only two players to have not taken a single exam before the individual portion at Final 8. Not a single one they took.
Don't you feel like you're just missing out of the game if you're not suffering through the anxiety of taking a test? Like, don't you feel like that's robbing you of such a quintessential element of these games? I don't know.
I mean,
I said my thought, like, I think it's actually helpful to take some of them.
It unfortunately hurt Jared and Monica when it got to that point, but yes.
I mean, the only other way is like you just need to have like an on-point social game to just get from everyone else when they're doing their quizzes. But like taking the quiz yourself is more expedient.
Mm-hmm.
So the final 9, you have, let's see, it's called Junk in the Trunk. Blindfolded teams need to find items in the trunk of stuff. This one does not go well for you, and so you will be back taking a quiz.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, story of my life. It was fun though. I think like we all agreed like this was like a very fun challenge. But like
it was my personal favorite.
It was hard. It was very hard. Actually, it's funny. Like right in front of me, I have my ranking of all the challenges in the season. This was number 3 for me.
I'm really curious to see your ranking afterwards.
Yeah,
because I know like
share that.
Yeah. So, with you, you're set on Michael. Is most of this around then just trying to distract or defer other players and where they're answering?
I cannot tell you how much of like the game at this point is, trying to get other people to believe things that Kiz and I don't actually believe to be true, which is the right way to play. That is the correct. I do think that was the right thing, but like I can't stress enough like that was actually quite hard just to do in general, but also quite hard on me because that's not really a way that I play things. Like you both played games with me, either in person or online. Like I am generally pretty loyal and pretty transparent. So like outright, absolutely lying to people to that degree multiple times around is not really the way that I do things, but I can't say enough. It really came from, going into this, like Steven, Victory House ended with me being wrong about the mole, making it to the end with being wrong about the mole because the mole did such a great job. It's just so amazing and is so perfect and just no flaws. And my second game being out very early in the mole and alive games. Like I was coming into this feeling pretty down on myself, honestly, about my abilities. And also, I think something that is very relevant here. This is the first social thing that I did and the first major thing that I did after my dad passed away. So it was just a couple months after my dad had passed away over the summer. So like that really did take a big toll on me, both in general, but like just I was going through this like process of like really genuinely trying to focus on me more. Like I just moved from Florida back to Ohio like a month or so before the game. I was really focusing more on exercise again and just like being more social. So like I kind of put that together going into this being like, this might not end the way that I want it to, but I at least want to, for once, try to put myself in the best position, even if that means screwing other people over, which is hard for me to do. So that really was a lot of it.
Was there anyone who wasn't buying what you were selling?
Not to my knowledge, at least not outright so. I will say the hardest nut to crack is Monica. Because she is a very shrewd one. I think she approached the game similar to like I did in the way that like we both keep our cards pretty close, like our actual cards pretty close. So I do think it took a little bit of time there, but I think again what helped is people really, to my knowledge, maybe you think different, Clark, but I don't think people really knew how close Kiz and I were working throughout the entire game.
I didn't notice it until it got to like maybe the final 6, but definitely the final 5. That like obviously you'll bring that up a little bit later, but around the final 5, that was when it clicked.
So it's after this round that I believe Jared gets eliminated.
Where final 9?
Yeah, is it final 9? Hold on, let me double check.
Final 9 is Corian.
So, final 9. Okay, finally it's Jared next. So the next round starts with another wine cellar. We talked a little bit about that with Monica and Sarah not understand the reference. Clark, do you want to illuminate what was going on here?
I want to apologize to them in advance because this is brutal. So this was the only clue that like specifically linked to Michael. So it was 2 clues in one, basically. So it was a picture of a woman, and then there was a little emblem at the bottom. So the woman is one of the wives. I don't know. I Wikipedia'd this like a day before. But the wife of John Jacob Astor, who Astoria is named after. And Michael lives in Astoria, Queens. And the emblem at the bottom is called a Holy Trinity symbol. And John Jacob Astor was buried at Holy Trinity Cemetery.
Yeah.
And
It's
I
a
would have
stretch.
recognized Madeline Astor because she's like very known for Titanic, because John Jacob Astor is the richest person on the Titanic and died on the Titanic, and his 18-year-old new wife went on to survive and then have his child because she was pregnant at the time, and then just her story is fascinating. But yes, but like our dossiers, it does say where we're from, but like for Michael, it just says New York City. So like I wouldn't have necessarily connected that to Astoria, like maybe, but I don't think that I even necessarily would. But so that would have been perplexing, but I would have known the person.
And so for challenges this round, you play touchy subjects. How does this go?
Oh, it went fine for me. No one really had anything shady to say about me. I don't think I was really given as like much of an answer. I think I was given like as an answer like twice the entire time, and it was typically just for like fine things. So, but it's fun. I like that. I kind of wish we got to be a little more shady even to people, but like literally, it was not. I went through that entirely unscathed, is the way that I would say.
I agree. Sorry, I was like, I think the questions were a little bit too tame, and I was like, if I could, I'd make them a little bit more shady.
Mm-hmm.
Well, because what's interesting is like, you know, when you see this in Survivor or something like that, you vote people out, so like you can be very upset with these answers. But in Real Evil, like, what were some of the questions being asked, or is it like kind of like
Who is the most feckless? No.
It was like, who do you think will win the Root of All Evil that isn't you? Who's your biggest competition? Which eliminated socialite do you wish was still in the game?
Who do you trust the most?
Who do you trust the most?
And who are you most surprised is still in?
Yeah.
I got picked once for who do you trust the most, I know. And I can't remember the other thing that I got voted for by one person.
Now, you end up, do you win this challenge?
So that wasn't an actual challenge. That was just like that was an activity.
Okay.
Yeah. So in the online version, when you get to the final 8, I do a socialite questionnaire, which is touchy subjects. But the answers to that and how many times, like if somebody was answered in the majority, those are used in the upcoming examination.
Yeah. So it's a lot of notes to take. But the challenge for that was the blood ball, which I will say is the most visually aesthetically cool challenge of the season. I would say like A+ for that.
This is with the champagne flutes, right?
Yeah.
And so how this one work exactly?
So how the challenge worked was, it is sort of like a touchy subjects knockout style challenge, but how it worked was each person got like a small red ball, and there's a ramp, and you have to roll the ball up the ramp into a 6x6 grid. And each player's name is in there, I believe, 4 times. And then in each of the corners of the grids, there's a wild space. So when you roll the ball and it lands in somebody's square, the player who the square it lands in, that player has to give a shot against another socialite to try and knock them out. So it's not who rolls it, it's who the ball lands in. So once somebody gets all 5 of their champagne flutes filled with blood, they're out of the challenge, but they can still be picked to deliver blood. And it was the last 3 ended up winning the challenge.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And
so I did not win this, but can I say a little bit here? Because I think this is like an important one. So this challenge, I think, speaks more to like the value of like having good social games, social awareness, and connections. Because first of all, I genuinely think that I would have won this challenge if it was not for one specific thing. So one person, and I was not sure of the reason, but apparently afterward I did find out that it was just a random choice. But one person, Sarah, like filled, I believe, 4 out of my 5 glasses. And I truly think that if she had not done that, I would have won. Like, I don't think I would have been like a primary target of anyone else, honestly. Like, would I have been first place? Maybe not, but I do think I would have been top 3, just based on kind of where I was situated in the game. But she chose to do that. She chose violence on that day. So I was eliminated, and I was upset, is what I will say. I was upset about that, but I actually think that I did a really good job of holding that in and like not having much of a reaction as much as
I saw otherwise.
Yeah.
After the challenge, I walked back into the house with my little laptop and everything after breaking down the challenge, and I did see you upset, and I saw you crying. And
I was upset, but I was not upset directly to Sarah.
Oh no, like you weren't upset at Sarah.
In the moment, I almost said something. I was like, should I say something here, something shady? And I chose not to. That's what.
No, you didn't do that, but I did see that you got upset.
Yes, I was upset and I was sad. But I chose not to say anything and chose not to be shady back. And I do think that was important because later on, when she was eliminated, she chose to give me her money. And I think that had I been, not so kind, that wouldn't have happened. Or at least that's my read. I want to give my money to someone who said something to me.
So for the quiz this round, you end up getting the 1-point bonus. For I think Clark listed as one of the steals of the season. Talk to me about this.
If you want to go ahead, Jamie.
Sure. I mean, I think I got it for the lowest amount of anyone all season, which I generally thought that unless I had the most money or knew I had the most money, I probably would never win the bids for safety. So I should go for like the bonus points as much as I can. But for that one, I only bid like $1 million or something like that.
I think it was like $1,001.
Yeah.
Now, because you're probably feeling pretty confident with Michael being your choice. Is it more like you feel like you need this advantage, or is it more about denying other people the advantage?
Well, the thing is, like, were we pretty confident? Yes, but we also knew that we could still be wrong. Like, there's nothing to say that we couldn't be wrong. So, like, I'm still gonna get any advantage that I can, even if I feel good, So it's more about that. Like, I will always do something to try to benefit my ability to stay if I can.
So with Jared being eliminated this round, how does that to change things for you?
I will say the day 2 boot order was not in our favor. In that, like, a lot of the people that we were trying to push as suspicious or as possible suspects for people did end up kind of getting eliminated, like, in a row. So it led to this scramble by the end of like, who do we like try to convince people is the killer at this point, So I think that Jared going was a really big one. I think Amanda even going was not ideal. And then definitely when Monica gets eliminated, that was like not good for us, but like we knew that was going to happen, and we'll get there, but still.
I think ideally we would love to see Jake or Nick eliminated somewhere along the way instead.
I would like to see them get eliminated to help with pushing the shadiness. I didn't want them to get eliminated because I like them, so it's both.
So Jared's at the game. Your next challenge, it's an audio memory challenge.
Before I get to this, I apologize. I have to head out now. But just want to say love you both. Thank you all for letting me be a part of this.
Yeah.
And congratulations once again, Jamie.
Of course. Thank you. Thank you for just being amazing and giving this opportunity.
Love you.
All right. Hey, thank you, Clark.
Yep. Have a good one.
All right, so now time to dish the dirt on Clark. Tell me all the secrets.
Clark is just a lovely gem of a person. Clark was one of the first friends that I made in orgs. Clark was the first like true ride or die I had in a Survivor game back in 2017. And we rode together and died together in that game, is what I will say.
So back to the game at hand. You have an audio memory challenge. I imagine like this challenge goes well for you.
Yes. So it's funny. This is like the most successful Jake and I are together in a challenge, and we're not actually playing together. So because it's an individual challenge, but we finished first and second. So we're the two who win safety here. And I love this challenge, not just because I did well in it. I just think it's a great, very creative challenge and just very challenging. So, essentially like Clark would play a series of sounds, and you needed to remember all of the sounds that you heard in order. So it's like audio memory, and then scattered around the yard were blocks that had different numbers on them. So he would play like a string of sounds. So it might be like 7 sounds. And then he would be like, I'm looking for this sound. And it would play one of those sounds again. And you'd have to remember where you heard that in the order, and then bring back the block with that number on it as fast as you could. So if everyone was right, then it would be the person who came back last would be eliminated. But if and someone was wrong, it'd be the first person in order who got it wrong would be eliminated.
So anything else you want to talk about about the final 7? This is where Sarah gets eliminated.
Like the only other like very significant for sure thing here is that this was when I did get money, because like when you're eliminated from the game, you can will 50% of any money that you have left to any player still in the game. So you can give it to one person or divide it between 2. And Sarah was the one person in the game who did give me money when eliminated. And I was actually thinking of that recently. I was like, oh yeah, it was obviously lovely that Sarah gave me money. It was like, oh yeah, that's the only person I got money from. But I actually think that that's also a function of, well, a lot of people I was close with, like, never had the chance to give away money. Like, I'm confident Kiz would have given me money, and I'm confident Nick would have given me money too. So like, there is that.
So at the final 6, this is where things really start getting hairy.
Yes.
The next challenge, Jake and Nick win, right? And so that leaves 4 people in the elimination: you, Kiz, Michael, and Monica.
Yeah.
We know post-game Michael's the killer. You heavily suspect at the time, so that means 1 of 3 people are getting eliminated: you, Kiz, or Monica.
Yes.
And
so, sorry.
Yeah, please.
So from the final 6 onward, like, I cannot speak. Like, if you ever get the chance to play the Root of All Evil in the future, like, I cannot tell you just how important money is in the end game of this game. Because like the challenges are obviously important, because if you win, you're golden. But like, if you're not winning, money management is so important, because like essentially 2 of the people who Kiz and I could stand to see getting eliminated, I won't say wanted to see eliminated, but could stand to see eliminated, were both safe. So taking the quiz was going to be myself, Kiz, the killer, who's automatically safe, and then just one other person. However, each round, they auction off a safety pass, so one of them doesn't have to take the quiz, and then a +1. So Kiz and I were always on our mind was like, we cannot be the only 2 people in this quiz with the killer. Like, we just cannot let that happen. So at the final 6, I did elect to spend pretty much all the money that I had on the safety pass to block Monica from getting it. Because like, I couldn't end up in the elimination with just Kiz, myself, and the killer. Like, that just could not happen.
Did you know that that's what Monica was going to buy?
I assume so, but even if she didn't, it would have still been fine. We needed either Kiz or I to have the safety pass, more than anything, because we still believe that Monica did not know who the killer was. So even if she did bid on the +1 and get it, we still believe that we would be able to beat her on the quiz.
Is there a world where you try to convince Michael the killer to buy the immunity instead of +1?
Would have done that.
Oh no, Jamie? Jamie, are you there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now. So you were saying we would have done that, but
Oh, but I didn't think that he had the money at that point because I believe at that point in the game he had bought in something himself, like at a very close round, and then just wasn't winning challenges.
I mean, in retrospect, like, should you like, had you not purchased, let's say Monica purchased the pass here, right? So Monica purchased safety. Kiz likely is the eliminated player. I think Kiz gets a perfect score after just
It would have
one
been
match.
Kiz or myself.
Yeah.
And so it would have been a crapshoot.
Really would have been a toss-up. Maybe let's say you get the +1, but for less money to help ensure that Kiz is the one that goes home. I mean, would that have made the next round any easier for you, or like Kiz being around was instrumental to getting through the final 5?
That's a good question. She is just someone who I just would never have betrayed. And it really was down to that. Like, I wanted to get through the entire game with her. And I did think it was still in our best interest to work closely together. But, that said, if we ever had to take a quiz just against each other, we were both going to go all out. I don't think either of us would have thrown in the towel. But, I really, really, really wanted to be as faithful to her as I could.
Well, and one of the big things that happens is Kiz inherits from Monica, right?
Yes.
Which likely then is a big factor for the next round too.
Yeah, so Kiz inherits Monica's money, which brings us down to the final 5. And
I mean, I guess one other thing, like, did Kiz have enough money at this moment to be the one to purchase safety instead of Monica, or you just like, I have more money?
We didn't exactly know everyone's money. Like, it would have been too hard to like track that in real time, especially with people willing each other money. So like, we weren't sure, but we did know that by the end of that round, when Kiz got that boost from Monica, Kiz definitely had the most money of anyone in the game.
So walking into Final 5, how much money do you have left at this point?
I don't know the exact total, but I definitely had the least of anyone because I had just bought the safety pass.
Yeah.
So going into that round, Kiz definitely had the most. I definitely had the least. And then I think Michael was probably right above me, and then Jake and Nick were second and third.
Because it's like you need one of two things to happen. Either you need to win the challenge, or you need the killer to win the challenge.
Yes. So this round is a big round, and I will tell you, like, going into it, like, I'm sorry, I just jumped in.
Yeah, this is your time. Go for it.
This is a big round because of just how it works. So it is the semifinal round. I knew that the challenge was very important because only one person was going to win it. So one person would win safety from the challenge. Then out of the other 4 of us, one person would be able to buy safety, one person would get a +1, and then 2 people would have nothing. One of those people with nothing could be the killer. And if that's the case, then that puts the other person at like a big, it's a big disadvantage because they're essentially taking the quiz against someone with a +1. And something that's very relevant here is that the +1s in this season do effectively allow you to get an 11 out of 10. That is a possibility on quizzes. So let's say I'm taking the quiz against Kiz or Nick or whoever who has deduced who the killer is at this point, and they have a +1, they would automatically knock me out, is what that means. And why I say the boot order is very tragic is because Monica was like the last person that we had left who we could like essentially sell to the other players as being the killer, because no one really thought, at least at that late in the game, that myself or Kiz were the killers. And no one really thought that Jake was the killer at that point either. So like essentially when Monica left, it kind of like revealed a lot of that onion to the folks, to like, Jake and Nick who weren't as certain before. It kind of made it more apparent who the killer probably was. So the boot order was tragic, and then my placement with money was tragic. So this this is gonna sound weird, but can I share an experience?
As long as you're fine that sharing it the world, yes.
Yeah. So this is the moment because like I had said before, like Kiz and I were working so closely together, and we're essentially like lying to people all through day two. This is the moment where it's like the hardest moment of the game for me when Monica left, and I realized like how this round was going to function and how important winning the challenge was for me. Like I had a comment because they were setting up the challenge. It was like an elaborate one. So I'm just sitting on the couch with Nick, just talking about different things to think about this round, or like who the killer could be, and like I can tell he's starting to maybe think like what the heck's going on here. And like I kid you not, there's this one moment where I just like stop talking, and Nick remembers this, we've talked about it since. I just stopped talking, and like it is literally like on the tip of my tongue, like it is about to come out that the killer is just Michael. Like that is just what it is. Like, and I've known this. Like, I essentially am just about to just like give that away because I feel, I don't know, the stress of it all, but also just like recognizing that I'm not in a good position myself this round, like needing to win or being like really down in money. But I literally pause, and then somehow I just decide not to do that, which leads to Nick being more confused, which is interesting. That wasn't what I was going for. But I almost just give that up. I almost give like the answer to him just straight up. But I decide, you know what? I've taken it this far. I want to see where it goes. And it was actually helpful. I got just a very quick pep talk right before the challenge with Destiny. I didn't share like many of the details of what's going on, but I did say how I'm just like really stressed about everything, and like just things are just like not a good position for me, just with like my money and whatnot. And her advice was just, you know what? You're just gonna go in there and just be confident and just do what you need to do. And that's just it. So that helped leading into the challenge.
So the challenge, this is a kind of a whodunit style where you have a crime scene, and you come back to the crime scene and things have changed. You have to kind of identify, kind of spot the difference style game. Unfortunately, Jake Sparks beat you out to the end here.
Yeah, I think I lost by one question, I think. Story of my life. But yeah, Jake won. He absolutely killed it. He actually destroyed all of the individual challenges, like across the board. But Jake won. So Jake had safety. And then, so it's essentially, which that's a nightmare scenario, because that means that Nick, Kiz, myself, and Michael face the auction. And Kiz has the most money. I wasn't sure, but I felt like Nick probably had the second most money. And then Michael had the third, and I definitely had the least of anyone. So, just flat out, like Kiz could buy safety if she wanted, and Nick could buy +1, which puts me not in a good position to make it to the finals there. So, was stressed. But that led to like what I would consider to be probably the biggest move. Clark said that he has agreed with that assessment of the season, which was we didn't have much time. We had maybe 5 minutes between that challenge ending and then going in to do the auction. And again, for the auction, you can only bid on one thing. You can only bid on safety or the +1. You cannot put a bid in for both. And it's private.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't realize it was either or.
Yes, that is a very big factor here. You can only bid for one or the other. So Kiz and I had this like very quick conversation between she and I on the couches after the challenge where we're like, how do we make this work? Like, how do we both get to the end? Like, what can we do to sort this out? And we come up with this ploy. so to speak, where I say, are you willing to go in there and convince them that you are bidding on the safety pass? Just go all out, talk about how excited you are, how happy you are to definitely make the finals, and just how you just want that relief and don't want to worry about it. But secretly, I was like, but are you willing to actually truly bid on the +1, which would essentially block the other two bids, Nick and Michael, from getting it, because you have the most money. We were pretty confident in that she had the most money and would be able to buy it. But if they think she's bidding on the safety pass, then they will both bid on the +1 because it's what they had the chance to get. So the plan was for her to do that, and then for me to then be the only person who bids on the safety pass and get it despite having the least amount of money. It was literally like a last minute conversation that we had. It was like kind of like our Hail Mary to get both of us to the finals, because it was the only thing that was going to really work with that. And we did that. And like, what's really funny is production did not know that was going to happen. So like, they remember like being floored, like when people came in, because kids did that. Like, she acted that out in front of everyone. But then when everyone came in and gave their bids, it was like bid for +1, bid for +1, bid for +1. And then when I was the only person who actually bid for the safety pass, like, it was shocking. Yeah.
So what's interesting about this round is, so Kiz and Nick take the quiz. Kiz gets a 9+1, and he gets 10. And Nick, at this point, goes all in on Michael, from what it seems, and gets a 9 out of 10 as well. It seems like there is a chance that you may
got a question wrong.
Yeah, if Nick had gotten the +1 and Kiz gets safety, if you had gotten a perfect score and beat his time, which was 3 minutes 44 seconds, it looks like, you maybe could have been able to eke out the end, but like, that would have been, you just don't know. Yeah. Right? You assume like he's all in and he's gonna get a 10 out of 10 +1.
Yeah, that is like the logical assumption, but that's not what happened. But and did the plan work out the way we wanted? Yes, but like, I still felt very bad. Like, I want only like happiness and success for Nick. It's not like I was like, oh, I need to screw Nick over. It's like, yes, I want that because I want Kiz and I to win, but I did feel so bad the entire time too.
What was the reaction to the other players when the revel? Because is it revealed publicly who gets these advantages?
So the eliminated players are kept apart from the people who are still in the game when the results come in, but then you go out and like tell them and they see. So this actually leads to like a really funny story here, because we talked about the house and then the gazebo and then the guest house. So going into this round, all of the eliminated players were playing board games in the guest house while we were doing this round and while we were finishing this round. And production had told the eliminated players that, and I didn't know this, but they said the next person who comes in and joins you, it will be the next eliminated player. Like, we're going to send them down to you to get greeted. But after I won the safety pass, I am on a couple of different medications, and I was like, okay, my meds are in my room, and my room is in the guest house. Can I go in and get that? So they let me do that before they took the quiz. So I walk in there to get my medicine, and I just like see like people like sighing and are upset, like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Like, what? It was a really sweet moment, because like, it did show, unless they were acting, that they were sad to see me get eliminated.
Well, thanks to your ploy, Nick is the next player eliminated, leaving you in the finals with Jake Sparks, Kiz, and the killer himself, Michael.
Yeah.
How much time do you have to prep before the final quiz?
We have less than 10 minutes. So the elimination happened, and they set up the semifinal elimination happened, and then they set up the final quiz and told us that we were doing it. It was less than 10 minutes because the game, which happens at live games a lot, went a little later than intended. So it was pretty immediate that we were taking the final quiz.
So Jamie, I have to ask, you missed a question. What happened?
I don't remember what specific question it was, but it was I think I got confused by the wording of it. And
Everyone
I
missed a question at
chose,
least.
I'm sorry?
Because everyone missed a question at least.
Yeah, so I chose to just kind of go with what I best understood instead of asking about it because I knew that the tiebreaker would come down to time. And what's interesting is like for the final quiz, all three of us finalists were taking it at the same time in the same room as each other.
Oh, so you can see like, hey, Jamie's done, and everyone's like, uh-oh.
Yes. So I knew that I finished first because they start us at the same time. It's like we all started at the exact same moment. So I knew that I was the first to finish. So essentially, like I knew if I got a perfect score that I should win. But granted, that did not happen. But yeah. So I got one wrong. Kiz got one wrong. Jake got two wrong, I believe. And yeah.
So how was the post game? Because then you have, I think you probably have the rest of the evening to kind of hang out and enjoy the time of the players without the stress of the game being on you.
It was really lovely. Honestly, it did take me a little bit to get over like the shock of me winning. Like you can see, like there's some great screen caps you can pull from that of like the winner reveal. I adored this cast. I really did. And that's aside from like my placement or anything. It was just a really good group of people. So just having some time just to hang out and process things afterward. And we played some werewolf that night. That was fun.
Because the best thing after a social deduction game is more social
deduction. Yes. So we did that. We definitely had some drinks, and also those of us who made it far into the game. I'm not sure how they did this with the other folks. We actually had to film all of our confessionals afterwards. So like I did most of my confessionals at like midnight or
dark outside
on the last game. Yeah.
So is there anything else about your experience you want to talk about that maybe we haven't had a chance to dig into?
I think more than anything, I would just say like, this is going to sound so like, this because like we're friends. But like, this sounds so nerdy, but like one of my biggest goals, biggest aspirations has always been to be on some kind of like a reality show, like be it Survivor, The Mole, Amazing Race. Those are like literally my favorite things, period. So like, I know I put a lot of pressure on myself to succeed at pretty much everything I do, maybe a little too much pressure. But like one of my biggest goals in life was to just like be on and win a reality show. I know this is a very small scale version of that, but like getting that opportunity just to do this and to have that success, like it does absolutely mean the world to me. Like this is something that I will hold on to forever. Like I'm not someone who necessarily thinks that I'll repeat that success. Who knows? Maybe I will. But like, for someone who struggles with confidence and loves these reality shows and just values the experience a lot, it does mean a lot that I can say, hey, I did that. I was successful at this one time. I did that. That's great. I'm very thankful for that. Yeah, that's a big message.
Well, as we wrap here, are you down for some rapid fire questions?
Sure.
So what was the lowest point in the game for you?
The lowest point in...
Oh no. Dr. Jamie froze again. So let's give it a second and see if Jamie returns to us.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes. All right. You were saying.
My internet's a little jumpy. I was saying the lowest point in the game would be either like the quiz right before round 2. Because like I said, like I was living at my very first quiz in like the last version of the online game, and I was just feeling very just like raw about it, just like not wanting to like let myself down. So either that, or just at the very start of the final 5 round, like feeling like the idea of like getting into the finals was slipping away. Those two.
What was the highlight of the game for you then? Your highest moments?
My highest moment would be, there's definitely like a number of them that come to mind. I would say when Kiz, Jake, and I survived the final double elimination at the very end of day one. That was a big highlight. Winning the noise complaint challenge was the second big one. I absolutely loved that one, and that was quite a challenging one. And another thing that we didn't talk about was we actually had like a full Thanksgiving style meal on day one, which is like the most elaborate food that I've seen for a live game ever. Like Heather Wakefield, absolutely amazing cook, chef, everything. Like we had like a full Thanksgiving dinner, and that's what made the night go on a little longer. But it was amazing just to be able to share that with everyone.
What was your favorite challenge?
My favorite challenge was the final challenge. The Defective Detective is the name of it. So where we had to like memorize the crime scene and then the changed crime scene and like answer the trivia questions about it. That would have been my number one.
Who surprised you the most in the game?
Can I have two answers?
Sure.
I would say Kiz definitely surprised me, and just like how well we were. I expected we'd be able to work together like once we decided that, but just how well and how much synergy that we had. But I think that she, myself, and Monica were not necessarily people that people would expect to, in that cast anyway, when we were there, have been there toward the end or at the end. So just getting to play alongside them in different ways was absolutely wonderful. Yeah, the boot order was wild in a lot of ways.
Who do you wish you had a chance to work with but didn't?
Several people. So I'll say something that's kind of funny is that I hold like positive sentiments toward literally the entire cast in my heart. And I do mean that, like, that's true. But it's really funny that, like, you know, now a couple of years later, or just about a couple of years later, the people who I am closest with were people who haven't really come up much today directly from me, because like it's people who, you know, I became closer with after the game and just keeping in contact with and doing other stuff with. So, you know, it would have been nice to be able to go back in time and work closer with them, because, you know, now I'm actually pretty close with Darian and pretty close with Nicholas and pretty close with Nicole, you know, and like they all went out relatively early, but they were also just not people that I had as much of a chance to interact with comparatively.
If you had to bring a fake clue in the game, how would you do it? Or what would the clue be like?
That's a really good one. I would definitely make sure that it connected in some subtle way to my own demographics. So I didn't bring this up before, but I feel like in general, I am not the best pick to be like a killer or mole or any sort of.
I think you make an amazing mole. I don't know what you're talking about, but continue.
Really? But because the thing is, historically, people always think that I am that person, regardless if I am or not. And I'm usually, I never am really. But there's just something about me that people just think that I am that role. So I'm not a good person to pick to be it. I'm a good person to have in the game to have people suspecting.
I will say you only got one nomination for the killer,
which really surprised me. That is a first. I'm almost always the top suspect.
So your clue would be something that would be linking to you in a sense to throw people off.
Yeah. I do stand by. I think I had the best answer for your murder weapon of choice on our dossiers.
What'd you say?
A lot of people said like poison or like knives. A flamethrower was a good one. But my answer, my preferred murder weapon would be the weight of capitalism.
I was thinking like, man, I would go for like boredom or old age, something that no one would see coming. So, Jamie, thank you so much for this time today, for talking through your game. Thank you to Clark, who's no longer here. Jamie, I know you are pretty active in the live reality game world. In fact, you host your own game. Who is the Mole? Is there anything you'd like to say or shout out about your game?
Yeah, I love my game so much. I mean, I'm biased, but Yeah, I host a mole game, Who is the Mole? We finished our second season this past summer. We always set it in Ohio. We're actually going to be casting for season 3 very soon. I will say most likely within a month or less, we'll open that up. But it's just something I have so much passion for. And I had planned to start that before Root of All Evil, like right before, but season 1 actually came out after Root of All Evil, and doing well on this season actually did give me a lot of confidence as a host, that, hey, I can take on this kind of a project and do it and be successful. But we've had 2 seasons that have gotten really good feedback from folks. People have really enjoyed themselves. Very thankful for my experiences there, and the team that I work with. My co-host Spencer, absolutely amazing. And yeah, if you're interested in a mole game, definitely check us out our page.
Yeah, so you can find more about Jamie's Who is the Mole live game on Facebook by searching the title. But yeah, Jamie, thank you again. Thank you everyone for tuning in and listening, and hope everyone has a great rest of your day.